Hello, and welcome to another episode of I Like to Look for Rainbows. In this episode, we delve into the world of mixed orientation marriages, as well as the experiences of growing up gay in the 80s in Canada with David Marginson. The interview that I did with him ran long, so we'll be splitting it up into two parts, and this episode is the first part. For listeners for whom this is important, this episode has at least a few brief PG-13 sections, some mentioning of exotic dancers, a mention of a sex act, and a quick blip of profanity. Wow, that actually sounds kind of racy and fun, and it is. So let's look for rainbows together, y'all. So won't you love me right? Love me right through your heart, my darling. Yeah, won't you love me right? Love me right through your heart, my darling. So, a few brief, quick hits, and we'll dive right in. In the intro, I mentioned a term that may not be familiar to many of my listeners, and that is mixed orientation marriage. This is a controversial topic, but also a very Mormon topic, so it's something we need to talk about. So here we go. Most romantic relationships and marriages are ones in which the two partners share an orientation. Most are between two straight partners, and some are between two gay or lesbian partners, just to use the orientations that we're probably all most familiar with. A mixed orientation marriage is one in which the partners don't share an orientation. Some of those, like my mixed orientation marriage, takes place between partners that may have different orientations, but also compatible ones. Not to put too fine a point on it, but I'm a man who's into both men and women, and some others, but let's keep it simple, and my wife is a woman. So check number one. And my wife is a woman who is into men, and I'm a man, so check number two. In other words, we don't strictly match, but it all still checks out. There are, however, especially in the Mormon tradition, as well as other conservative religious traditions, many mixed orientation marriages that aren't really compatible in terms of physical intimacy or romantic attraction, or at least don't seem to be so on their face. For avoidance of doubt, I maintain that the vast majority of these don't really work, but some really do. Taking David's example, a gay man married to a straight woman. Now, your next question might be, why? Why would anyone enter into such an arrangement? Well, you must first understand the damaging way that we talked and taught about these things, and to a lesser but still large extent, we still do, before you can understand the why of mixed orientation marriages, particularly in a Mormon context. First, we as a church often, or almost always, specifically deny that being queer in terms of who we're attracted to is a valid identity. Elder Bednar, one of our current 12 apostles, is well known for saying rather recently that gay members of the church don't exist. Now, let's not misunderstand him. He didn't or doesn't think that people who think of themselves as gay don't sit in the pews in Mormon churches worldwide. I'm sure he knows that that's true. He's saying that gay isn't a valid identity like man or Mormon or Utah are. He conceives of being queer as a problem that can be overcome or dealt with, so he thinks that self-identifying as, say, a lesbian, to be like identifying as something like a flu haver, or over-focusing on a struggle or malady that you have that can distort your view of yourself and may deepen the issue itself. And while we've made some halting good steps on official church websites like MormonandGay.com and in quasi-official outlets like the Deseret News and LDSLiving.com, and I'll quickly pause here to acknowledge that those same outlets have made some really bad missteps too, a passage in one of the handbooks officially mandated for use by leaders of Mormon congregations on the topic of queer people, well, they don't call us that. They instead say members with same-gender attraction, suggests that local leaders use the pamphlet from 2006 called God Loveth His Children. In that tract, here's a relevant passage. Quote, "In addition to filling your life with positive influences, you must also avoid any influence that can harm you spiritually. One of these adverse influences is obsession with or concentration on same-gender thoughts and feelings. It is not helpful to flaunt homosexual tendencies or make them the subject of unnecessary observation or discussion. It is better to choose as friends those who do not publicly display their homosexual feelings." End quote. This indicates to me that they not only don't want you to identify as queer, but warn you not to associate with those who do, and warn you not to mention it to any others. And what is the effect of all this denial? Well, it can delay or even prevent your ability to realize that you're queer. After all, if faithfulness is conditioned on acceptance of the premise that one cannot be gay, but can only do wrong gay things, how can you accept that you're gay? Even when there's really convincing evidence in yourself that you are. In addition, if being queer is always framed in terms of being a struggle, you naturally think that you can overcome it, and that your natural feelings are sinful and wrong. And then your inherent nature becomes a torturous cage that no one else can see, that you are powerless to escape from. Simply put, if you make what I am inherently negative, and tell me never to speak of it, and never call myself by a name that describes me, is it any wonder that we cannot or will not understand these things about ourselves? Insisting on referring to all non-heterosexual orientations with the identical same-gender attraction moniker prevents us from understanding what we are. For example, I've probably always been bisexual, but since I did experience same-gender attraction, I was lumped in with gay men and lesbian women. This was particularly confusing to me when I was a teenager and a young adult. I do share some important things with those folks, gay men and lesbian women, but there are important differences that the flawed moniker of same-gender attracted obscures. How could I understand what I was, and how I was both similar to and different from both gay and straight people, when the only way I was allowed to talk about myself made me the same as a group of people I actually have some real differences with? And are we not surprised that lots of queer Mormons take forever to learn important truths about ourselves when this is the context that we grow up in? Lastly, and this was perhaps the most decisive and harming factor of all, is the culture of secrecy around the whole thing, coupled with how high stakes we present it as. Remember, an eternal marriage is the pinnacle Mormon spiritual experience and practice. Eternal progression is contingent upon a marriage to another member of the church who does all the Mormon things and eschews non-Mormon things. So, gay men were told to marry straight women to fix their gayness, and lesbians were similarly told that relief and potential future exaltation would come only from marrying straight men. And most of the time, they were told not to tell their spouses to be, and most of those unions, as you might suspect, don't work out. Being given this kind of messaging largely isn't the case now, but it was for many, many years, and the effects of these harmful practices are still coming home to roost. Anyway, now that you understand how this could ever happen, let's hear David's story. Okay, so, David, thanks for being willing to share your story, to be profiled on the podcast. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm a father of 5. I'm a high school teacher working remotely. I've been divorced 6 years. I used to be a lifelong member. I was born in the church. I only just resigned February, I think it was.
Oh, this past year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this year.
Oh, of 17?
Yeah, just recently.
Oh, hot dang. Okay, so just a couple months.
Yeah, I had the letter written for a while. I just did it. I sent a letter into my branch president. I didn't do it with I did it the official way, the way you're supposed to do it.
Just out of curiosity, because I've never, how does one, like, what is the official way?
The official way is to let your bishop or your branch president know.
And does that have to be in writing? Or?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, a lot of people send it into the church headquarters.
Oh, okay.
But technically, the church headquarters will just send it right back.
Oh, okay. So to your local leaders,
yeah.
And then they'll process
it from there.
Fair enough. Okay.
But I had that letter written almost a year.
Okay.
And it was very difficult to make that move to saying, yeah, this is it.
Well, sure. I mean, presumably, so you said lifelong member, so
I was born
all your
in the
life.
church.
So anything that you do for that long a period of time, I suspect.
And with such devotion.
Sure. Yeah. So we were talking earlier, you said you served a mission.
Yeah.
So what was it, besides sort of, so what was it that made you sort of decide, hey, I want to take this step, I want to leave the church? What caused that?
Well, coming out 2 years ago, I tried to follow the church guidelines.
Mm-hmm. And just to be clear, you're gay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So coming out a couple years ago, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, continue.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I came out 2 years ago, and at first I thought I could do both. I thought I could, follow the guidelines that the church set out for gay members. And the more I tried, the more I saw it was, to me, very, what's the word? Two-faced?
Oh, yeah.
They're asking, like, if one of my best friends, straight and divorced, was like, it's no different than asking me to be celibate. I'm like, yes, it is. Because I can't act upon, if I see an attractive man,
Right.
I can't ask him out on a date.
Right.
I can't hold his hand. I can't kiss him.
Right.
You could.
Right.
As a straight, divorced, single man. That's double standards.
Yeah.
And the more I was trying to not think about that, the more it was like, no, you can't do that.
Well, and that actually brings up a good point. It's something we've talked on the podcast about before. It's confusing two very similar terms. The church asks gay members to be celibate. They ask straight members to be abstinent.
Yes.
Because celibacy is sort of a permanent thing.
Yes.
And that's what was being asked of you. Whereas, again, when your friend, the straight guy, said, "Oh, they're asking me to be celibate," that's not true.
No.
They're asking him, "Well, be abstinent until
you find someone,
and unless
and you could,
right, could be tomorrow."
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of my friends that are gay are like, no, you can still go out on dates and still be in the church.
Yep.
But in my head, I'm a cut and my whole life
Right.
has been, this is what it says, this is what I do.
Right. Well, and the question, you certainly could, I suppose, but there's also a question of, well, where is this leading?
Yeah. Like, why am I going out on a date with this guy?
Right.
Like,
Particularly since what the church says is like relationships should lead to marriage.
Because I hang out with my friends.
Right.
But if I'm actually going out on a date, that's acting upon my homosexuality, not hanging out with my friends.
Right.
There's a difference.
I see. So.
And so that's what drew me over the edge to say I can't, because I went into my branch president and I said, before you excommunicate me because I'm looking for a boyfriend and a husband, and before I go to the point where you get excommunicated, I wanted to be the one in control of leaving the church, as opposed to them excommunicating me.
Right.
I left because it's a conflict of interest.
To jump before you're pushed.
Yes.
So was there a time when you were like, okay, like a period of months or years where you said, no, I'm going to keep going to church, I'm going to keep doing all my callings, all this stuff, single, gay man, do everything that I can to sort of make it work? Or was there a pretty quick sort of departure point when you came out and you said, so how was that process? How long did it take?
It was about a year.
Okay.
I came out and I was living up in Attawapiskat.
It's far north Ontario.
Far north Ontario, fly-in community. And I was doing, I used to do my own sacrament. I would play my guitar, sing a church hymn.
Wow.
Do the sacrament prayer over a slice of bread and a glass of water.
Because there was no unit there.
There was no unit.
Right.
It's me.
Right.
It's just me.
Sure.
And I would read a scripture or watch a conference talk on YouTube.
Right.
And then I would close with a prayer.
Wow.
I did a sacrament. And then I would do a Skype call into priesthood.
Wow. And that was a unit farther south, I guess?
Yeah, that was in Cobalt.
Wow.
And I did that ever since I moved up there, 2012 up until 2014, 2015.
See, to me, that would, just from my perspective, I would think that, like, if I were the only person there, it would be very easy to sort of, that sounds like an incredible amount of devotion where no one's checking up on you.
I was devoted, I was 100% in the church.
Right.
100%.
Sounds like it. So I want to talk, if it's all right with you, I want to sort of go backwards chronologically and sort of ask questions about, like, sort of your early life. At what point did you sort of get a sense or start realizing that you were gay or suspect that you might be, or sort of how did that process play out in your youth, if it happened in your youth?
I think it was my youth. I can remember, like, looking back, I've sat down and I've thought, because people have asked me or have talked about, oh yeah, I've known since.
Right. You mean other people when
Other
they're talking
people
about you?
No, them.
Oh, I see.
Like themselves have said, "Oh, I've known I was gay since I was 6,
Right.
or this or that." And I used to not. I didn't know I was gay.
Right.
I didn't.
Right.
But looking back and looking at certain points in my life, grade 8, I had a good friend, Michelle, and her boyfriend was far more attractive to me than my actual girlfriend was.
Ah, okay.
And I can remember making out on sofas. She had that sofa, my friend and her boyfriend, Scott. And I had this sofa with my girlfriend, Miranda. And I can remember glancing over at him.
Right.
But I didn't think anything. I didn't know.
Right.
I just thought, I don't even know what I thought.
So when that sort of thing happened, did you sense any sort of, ooh, I shouldn't, or just kind of like, or was it even confusing, or was it just like something that was just kind of going on? That you
It was
didn't
just
give my
going
thought
on,
to?
but I didn't even I didn't even put a thing to it.
Okay.
Until after.
Do you remember growing up? I mean, it may have differed. So you grew up in southern Ontario near Toronto, yeah?
Yes.
So this part may differ a bit just based on geography, but at the time that you would have been in youth, some people in other parts of the world talked about sort of hearing sort of what we now would think of as anti-gay messaging in church.
All the time.
Okay.
I had the factories. Peterson.
The little
Marky
factories
Peterson,
talk.
the little factories talk.
That was a Boyd K. Packer one.
Was it? I thought it was Peterson.
Peterson may have done another one, but
I just remember. They're all just jumbled.
Sure,
There's
there's
so many of them.
There's a bunch.
There's
yeah.
so many of them. Oh, and in my youth programs, and it's interesting because I can remember my young men's leader having these discussions on Wednesday nights.
Oh, okay.
But he came out of the closet years later.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've had lots of good conversations, he and I.
Interesting.
And
this is a youth leader of yours.
My youth leader.
Wow.
And he came out. He stayed married for the kids, and then after the kids were old enough, they separated and divorced. I came out to him shortly after I came out myself.
Right.
I talked to him about it because I was trying to figure things out.
Sure.
And yeah, he said, Dave, it was the hardest thing for me to be in the youth program and telling you these things and being gay myself.
Did you find later in your life that ever happened to you, where you were like in a calling where you were talking to the youth and you were expected to talk about like, hey kids, don't be gay kind of thing? Oh, okay.
I never. I was a young men's leader, and I've always been, I guess, more liberal in those ways.
Sure. Fair enough.
I never did.
So since you were talking about being young and sort of looking back and being able to see things, at what point did you start to either suspect that this may be a problem, or not that it is a problem, but you might have thought of it as a problem at the time, or suspect, geez, there's something different about me, about the way that I relate to men and women, girls and boys?
I was probably 15. I can remember when I was 14, we moved to England, and there's certain things, like I can remember at a school dance, some older boy grabbing my bum and saying, hey, how does the Canadian boy go? And I can remember thinking, yeah, I'd like to go that way. But I didn't, and I couldn't.
Right.
And so, but it wasn't until I came back to Canada, we moved back to Toronto.
And how old were you then?
Grade 10.
Okay.
So
16, something like that?
15, 16.
Okay.
And in the Toronto's, in the Sun, the newspaper, they would have the Sunshine Girl, and later on in the newspaper, page 27, 30, somewhere around there, they would have the Sunshine Boy. And I can remember ripping those pages out and then feeling extremely guilty that I had a stack of them, so I would burn them.
Wow.
And my science teacher, Mr. Musselman, was his name, of all things.
Name.
Yeah. And he was a Sunshine Boy one day. And he
And these were just people that were
just general people in Toronto.
That were thought to be attractive, or what
No,
made
they
them
were
a sunshine boy or sunshine girl?
Sunshine boy and sunshine girl. Like, it's not like the ones in England. They're like the girls in the sunshine page in Toronto are fully clothed. In England, they're topless. But here, it's just people send in their photos to be sunshine boy and sunshine girl.
And I guess the criteria is like not
attractive.
Like good grade, but like how good you look.
Yeah, it's attractive. It's the newspaper.
Sure.
And so, you know, they're in some. He was holding a tennis racket in typical '80s tennis shorts.
Sure.
And yeah, nice chest. And there's my science teacher, which is a lot of fantasies.
Sure. Right.
And so it was bizarre because I knew it was wrong.
Right.
And I persisted with it, and I would feel guilty as anything.
Right.
And I would act upon it, and then I would repent of it.
Sure.
And it was almost spontaneous in the process.
Right. Fair enough. So I guess, you know, you're getting closer to the end of high school, presumably preparing for a mission. Did this sort of, as you conceived of it, problem, like, sort of stay the same, get worse in your mind, like, sort of lessen?
It was terrifying to think about going on a mission. How would I react to being with guys on a 24/7 basis?
And were you at all concerned about, like, geez, what if they can tell? What if I'm not passing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I can remember trying to be more Mormon-y.
Sure.
As opposed to my flamboyantness.
Sure.
Because I was an art student. I was the drama student. I used to dance in a black cape.
Okay.
Like, just weird things that not standard. Like, I used to wear a fedora all the time, and my bishop said, "David, you can't be wearing a fedora. That's too odd."
Okay. All right.
And stuff like that. So I'd change my clothing and be more conservative.
Right.
And change my hand gestures.
Sure.
And watched what my other friends were doing.
And kind of mimic that to be
kind of mimic what they were doing. And totally focused. Like, every time I thought I was attracted to some guy, the thoughts were a lot quicker. I would try to not, like, I would quicken the repentance process.
Sure.
Because even a thought to me was a sin.
Sure. So did you do this sort of, like, the stuff that was taught at the time, like the humming the hymns?
The humming the hymns, the saying a prayer.
Right.
You know, whatever stays on the stage is what is the stage, sort of thing. So it was a constant battle to not think of those things.
But even at this point, you were kind of thinking, well, you yet didn't conceive of yourself as, like...
I didn't conceive myself as gay.
Right. Because there was no such thing at the time, right?
There wasn't.
At least
and
in
the
church.
Gay people were dying of AIDS at that time.
Right.
And they didn't even know at that, you know, when I was growing up in the 80s, it was that was the plague that was saving mankind from the gay people.
Nice.
You know, I can remember in Toronto there's a fall fair, the Canadian National Exhibition. And in the food court, the big food building, there's a bathroom on the top floor that's monstrous. And my dad, I can remember saying, "Don't use those ones. There's AIDS on those toilet seats because the gays use those as hookup places." He didn't use those words, but that's what he said.
Speaking of your dad, that made me think of a story when we were talking earlier before we started recording about your dad sort of hearing. This was maybe right before your mission?
No, this was after my mission.
That was after your mission. Okay, we'll get to that later then.
Okay.
So talk to me about, like, what the mission was like.
It was difficult, but I ended up it was liberating.
I've heard other people describe it that way.
But difficult.
Sure.
I ended up not being the model missionary.
Okay.
My first mission companion was trunky as anything, and he was too tired and blah, 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 so we didn't tract as often as we should and stuff.
And just real quick for our non-Mormon listeners, trunky means that you're sort of eagerly looking forward to being done and sort of not doing your best while you're still out. Anyway, continue.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so, but my second companion, Elder West, was known as one of the 12 apostates.
Okay.
And he had, like, the 12 apostates got together one night, tattooed their feet with the M for Manchester Mission.
Okay.
And they did all sorts of wacky things. And the first thing he said to me was, how much of a mission do you want? What kind of mission do you want?
Right.
And I'm like, well, I want to be a missionary.
Right.
And he says, well, we're going to the movies on Friday, but my companion moved away. Do you want to do that?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, I
Right.
don't know. And then it was an interesting sort of revelation for myself that if I was at home in Toronto doing missionary work,
Mm-hmm.
I could go to the movie
Right.
and still do missionary work and still probably do okay.
Sure.
And so I rationalized for myself
Mm-hmm.
that if I was to get through these 2 years,
Uh-huh.
going to the movie is not a sin.
Right.
And so I went to the movies, and we still tracked it, and we still talked to people.
Right.
Did I have I don't know if the spirit was that, like,
Sure.
you know, because I'm supposed to not.
Right.
The commandments for a missionary are so regimented.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
I remember.
yeah. So I became more lackadaisy with those,
Uh-huh.
but I still did the work.
Uh-huh.
But after hours,
Sure.
you know.
Were your pre-mission fears about, like, ooh, what's it going to be like being all the time in close quarters with this guy my age?
It was difficult because
Mhm.
there were times, like, Elder West was very athletic.
Mhm.
We went jogging, and he did sit-ups and push-ups, and I had to hold his, you know, the traditional
Sure.
gym class.
Where you hold his feet.
Hold his
Yeah.
feet for the sit-ups, and that was very difficult.
Sure.
I got excited for a second because Elder West was my favorite. I shouldn't say his name.
No, you're fine. Oh, okay.
Elder Blank.
Okay. All right, we're gonna.
No, either way, it doesn't matter. He's
right.
not going to listen.
Okay.
But he was my favorite companion. I
Right.
still have a crush on him,
Sure.
and that was difficult. And he was he called me Davy, and so as opposed to Elder Margetson,
Right.
I called him James,
Uh-huh.
and we were good friends.
Right.
You know, and we did so much together.
Right.
And it was almost in my head. I looked at it as a relationship as opposed to a companionship.
Ah, interesting. Well, it's interesting because, like, I mean, I remember, I don't know what it was like in England at the time, but, like, when we would talk, for whatever reason, the particular way that, like, companion, and
Yes.
particularly, even when you say that in English, it sounds very, like,
Sexual.
yeah,
Or
it's a
relationship
relationship-y.
oriented.
I mean, the way that it was, the way
Oh,
that
yeah,
it
my
was translated in
companion here.
Chinese was like something that, like, a man would describe his wife as.
Yeah,
sometimes.
my companion and I.
You know, so it was always very weird for me. I don't know if it was this way for you, where, like, sometimes your investigators, people you were talking to, might be like, wait, so what's the relationship here?
Yeah.
And it was always uncomfortable for me because I was, like, trying to very much make it not
Yeah,
that, because I
well,
was worried about,
yeah.
like, me becoming that scary gay thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
I
I
didn't want
had-
to be.
I
And
had
then
a-
here I'm using this, like, terminology that makes people have suspicions, and
Yeah.
it
'Cause we-
increased my anxiety. I don't know if it was the same for you.
Yeah, in Wigan, where Elder West and I served,
Mhm.
we had two ladies who said, "So you're companions? So are you gay?"
Mm-hmm.
They just flat out,
Right.
two good-looking young guys
Uh-huh.
dressed well.
Sure.
And
What are we to think?
What are we to think? You're companions,
Right.
You're in a companionship.
Right.
You sleep in the same room,
Right.
but not in the same bed.
Right.
And you eat together, you live together, And we're like, no.
No.
Hmm.
Interesting. All right, so submission's over. What?
Well, with one more guy, one more missionary.
Absolutely.
Elder Mason.
Uh huh.
He and I were companions for almost 6 months,
Right.
and he was struggling with homosexuality on his mission, but he actually.
Did he tell you about it during?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, he didn't.
Right.
But we were both struggling
Right.
with it, and he was. He would always. Our district was very close, in a sense,
Uh-huh.
and we would go out on walks
Uh-huh.
into the meadows and stuff of the north,
Uh-huh.
and he would always be 100 yards ahead. Obviously, now looking back, contemplating on things, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? I pushed it aside, and I think he addressed it Because after my mission, I came home, and he came out maybe a month after, and I got a letter from one of my mission friends who was still out.
And this is while you were still on your mission?
Yeah.
You got the letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
And no, I was home.
Okay.
He was on his mission, and he came out on his mission.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
He met somebody in one of his areas that they tracked it up, and they fell in love.
Wow.
And,
I can't even imagine. I mean, this was
89?
89.
89, 90.
Wow.
To 91. That was my mission years.
Interesting.
And and in England, that was just it was unheard of.
Well, it was unheard of almost anywhere, right?
Yeah, yeah. And he came out, and his companion was actually quite good about it, because they had made a plan that Elder Mason would leave and go to his boyfriend, but the companion would wait an hour and a half, 2 hours before calling the mission home.
Oh, okay.
And
this is when this particular missionary, Elder Mason, had decided, I'm going to make a clean break of it.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah, because he talked to the mission president about it,
Uh-huh.
and the mission president wanted him to do counseling and
Right.
to maybe go home dishonorably because he had found a boyfriend, things like this, and he's like, "You're not going to do that to me."
Right.
Like I've told
good
him,
for him,
how brave.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I still think, why am I not that? How could I not have been that?
Don't beat yourself up that way.
But I can't beat myself up. But I have,
Right. Sure.
There's a few times that I have.
I understand that.
And he came out, and I was just like, in my head, wow, amazing, good for him.
Yeah, so what was your thought process when that happened while so you had just come home from your mission, you were hearing this, you were getting a letter about it. What was your thought about, the step that he had taken at the time?
I was amazed. I can remember being, wow, and was quietly proud of him.
But did you ever think,
But also,
did it ever trigger, maybe I am as well, or still no?
No, didn't trigger yet.
Interesting.
It didn't trigger yet. I didn't, because I wouldn't, because they were just temptations that I was encountering,
right?
And I could overcome them,
right?
Why would I there was nothing to come out to,
right? It wasn't an identity.
We all have our own. No, it wasn't an identity. It was just struggles,
right? Sure. So I wanted to go back since now chronologically we're back after your mission. I wanted to go back to something we talked about previous was a time when after your mission somebody had sort of gotten this idea that you might be gay, had asked your father, who was, I guess, in addition to whatever other calling he had, was also serving in the Toronto Temple.
He was working in the temple.
And so I wanted to, if you wouldn't mind just sort of recounting that story.
I had my best friend at the time. I had actually brought him, he was inactive, my friend Jeff, and he came, I stalked him until he came back to church. We were good friends before our missions, but we sort of drifted a little bit apart. We were working in the same mall, and so I would we would end up having lunch together. I ended up working at the Gap when he ended up, I got 2 jobs because I would be good at folding.
Right.
And the manager just hired me because of my folding techniques.
Okay.
But anyways, I brought him back into the church, and for 2 summers we were inseparable.
Right.
We would do road trips together. We went to every single YSA function.
Right.
I would pick him up in my car, and And one night at a barbecue, we were just sitting poolside talking the whole night. And another friend came up and said, "Hey, why don't we go somewhere?" And we was like, "No, we're just chilling here." And he ended up telling me, the guy the guy who wanted us to go to another party started a rumor that Jeff and I were gay, and that we were a couple.
Right.
And he ended up telling me that he was jealous of our friendship, and that's why he started it.
Jeez, wow, okay.
And so the Toronto Steak isn't very large in its people-wise. Like, it's a big group. It's the size of the city.
Right.
It went all around the steak.
Right.
Got back to my dad one night in the Toronto Temple up in Brampton. And my dad came home furious,
Uh-huh.
fuming. And I was walking up the stairs to my house, to my room.
Right.
And he's like, David, get down here. And I was walking up, and he grabs my leg, or
Uh-huh.
my ankle.
This is while you're on the stairs?
Walking on the stairs.
Oh, wow.
Grabs my foot, my ankle, and pulls me down the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And gives me a hoof in the ribs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm trying to get up, and he slaps me down. And his finger's like 2 centimeters from my face. And he says, I've heard you're gay. Someone told me in the temple that you're gay.
Mm-hmm.
You better not be. So
Wow.
help me God.
Huh.
And at this point in my life,
Uh-huh.
because we'll have to backtrack a little
Yeah.
bit in a sec, I was going through therapy
Right.
at this point.
Ah. But he didn't know.
He didn't know.
I see.
He didn't know. Nobody knew except my bishop, who was in the singles ward, and Brother Barber,
Uh-huh.
my therapist,
Right.
the psychiatrist. And I crying my eyes out because my dad was
Right. Was
abused. It was
and
awful.
Was this something that was kind of out of character for him? For
No,
other things?
I've been
Oh.
beaten by my dad many a times.
Sure. Fairly common at the time, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, even in my childhood, right back. Like, there's stories of if my dad's not wearing a watch to church,
Uh-huh.
it was a bad morning at the Margetson house because his watch strap would break from
Wow.
hitting us. So it was,
And everybody kind of knew, and it was just like,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
part of the furniture.
Yeah.
Right. Fair
yeah,
enough.
he had a very sharp temper.
Sure.
And yeah, it was just awful. And I thought, going through therapy,
Right.
trying to fix my issues,
Sure.
and then my dad doing this, and going through the therapy, I knew that I wasn't just me having struggles with homosexuality.
Right.
I realized that I was gay
Ah.
at that point
Interesting.
because of
It almost
What-
was like that going to that step was the thing that made you understand that this was not something. The
Yeah.
thing that was meant to get rid of these temptations was
Was
the thing that let you
enhancing it.
knew that this wasn't just a temptation.
yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That probably was not their intent, but
No.
good for
And
you.
going through and when my dad did this, I said, no, there's no way.
Right.
I'm not.
Right.
Because at that point, then I realized if I had come out,
Right.
who knows? I would have been kicked out of the house. I know that
Right.
for a fact.
Sure.
100%.
At least.
Bare minimum.
Right.
But, yeah, the therapy...
Yeah, so let's back up as you said. Like, so what was it that, so after the mission, you're sort of doing all the normal church stuff.
Doing all the normal church stuff, my girlfriend dumped me
Uh-huh.
a week after my mission. We had
All
been
right.
writing letters all the time.
Ah, so like a
post Dear John.
A post Dear John, right. Okay.
And yeah, it was nice. She made a picnic, and it was a lovely day. And oh, by the way, we're not going to be a couple anymore. It was kind of bizarre.
Okay.
But yeah, it was all fine. And I used to hang out at a coffee shop
Mm-hmm.
and in a mall, and across the hallway in the coffee shop there was a men's store,
Uh-huh.
and there was a guy who used to work there, and I found him very attractive.
Right.
And this is the first time, I guess, that I didn't quickly repent.
Right.
I would sit and have my hot chocolate,
Right.
and I would watch him work.
Right.
Sort of, kind of creepy, I guess. I don't know.
Sure.
He was attractive, and I just watched him for a bit.
Right.
And then I went in and I bought a pair of pants and a shirt that he tailored for me.
Uh-huh.
And we started talking, and he asked me if I'm gay.
Uh-huh.
And he says, I've been watching you watch me, sort of thing. And I said, I don't know.
So was that the first time you didn't immediately say no when anything
Yes,
that was ever brought
that was
up?
the first time that,
Maybe even to yourself.
even to myself,
Hmm.
that I thought, what am I doing?
Right.
What am I doing?
Sure.
Because I normally would, if those thoughts even entered my head, no, I'm not.
Right.
And this is the first time I'm like, I don't know.
Sure.
And he says, well, my boyfriend and I are going down to the university for a nightclub. Why don't you join us?
Huh.
And when it was a gay club night.
So it happened to be that the guy that you had been watching
It was gay.
was gay.
Yeah.
Do you think you sort of knew, or you had no
I
idea?
kind of knew.
Okay.
Yeah. Idioms were the same.
Sure.
gestures. And
Sure.
it's not to be stereotypical, but
No. I mean,
there you go.
I personally, gaydar seems to be real.
Gaydar seems to be real,
Right.
of course. And so it's funny because I dressed up as old man as possible. I had this cardigan on.
So you went with them?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I drove my car down to his house. We started with, well, they had a few drinks, and I had my Sprite. And then we drove off to the university, and we danced.
Right.
There was a bunch of gay people, and there I was.
I find it fascinating, this idea, like, I'm going to go downtown to, like, what I know to be, like, a gay dance party or whatever, and it's still like, oh, no, I'm still going to just have a Sprite.
Yes.
Like this.
Yeah, there's a whole other story of that when I did come out.
Right.
Later on.
Right. Okay.
The dichotomy of doing something as evil.
Right, or at least what you thought at the time.
As what I thought of as the time as evil.
Mm-hmm.
Going to a nightclub that's just for gay guys.
Right.
But still, oh no, I can't have a drink. That's against the word of wisdom.
Right.
You know?
Which the reaction must have been priceless.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. It's hilarious.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah. And so that was the end of it. Just that one off.
Okay.
And then I thought to myself that they're not evil.
Right.
They're not bad.
That must have been really just wow.
Yeah. But it wasn't
They don't literally
they're
like shaved off their horns.
Yeah.
You know?
And but I still thought, but I can't do that.
Sure.
And then I, at the same time, afterwards, before the therapy,
Mm-hmm.
I used to go to a strip bar.
Oh, okay.
On Yonge Street, there was a gay bar.
All
There
right.
was a strip club. And I would sit there again with my cranberry and ginger ale.
Again, right.
Watching men strip.
Right.
And
how old were you then?
21, 22.
Okay.
Just right, almost a year after my mission.
Right.
22, 23, somewhere around there.
Sure.
And, I would just, occasionally I would do a lap dance.
Uh-huh.
And, but then I would always go home and repent.
Sure.
And say, no, I won't do that again.
Right.
That was wrong.
Right.
And it sounds, it's bizarre.
Sure. It's got to
And
seem
it
very
doesn't-
strange from
And I'm
looking
sure
at it from here.
and I'm sure some people are like, but how could, I've had people say that to me. How could you not know? Or how could you think that it was, or just...
Are the people who ask that question not LDS? Because it
Yes.
seems very obvious to me, being LDS.
Yeah, not being LDS,
Right.
people are like,
Right.
duh.
Right.
Or why would you? Or so many questions
I'm
about
sure.
that.
I bet.
So why would,
So how did you get from that point to, so what was the process from that point to feeling like, because I assume since you're talking about therapy, it probably was something where you went to your bishop, talked to him
yes,
about
what happened
it.
was two things.
Uh-huh.
There was one of the guys who was a stripper there. He and I, roughly the same age, got along so well. Like he would, as soon as he finished dancing, he would come down and we would talk about the classes he took. He was in psychology at York University. So
you were at York at the
I
same time as
wasn't
well?
yet.
Oh, you weren't
no,
yet.
I was
Okay.
married when I went to university.
Oh, I see.
I was at art college though at
Oh.
this point, and so we would talk about anything.
Right.
You know, the Jays game or this and that.
Sure.
We just talked, and then he's like, "Oh, I've got to go do," and then then he'd come back, and as opposed to collecting money from lap dances, he talked to me, and we had a great relationship.
Sure.
For almost like 3 months, I would say. And one night he says, "Why don't you come home with me?" And no.
Sure.
That was me going, I guess I set myself boundaries of what I considered to be me acting upon my
Sure. And you
homosexuality.
still hadn't been with a guy at that point.
And I still hadn't been with a guy.
Right.
Just the occasional lap dance.
Sure.
And, but no, I couldn't go home with him.
Right.
That would be me going over the edge.
Right.
Of no return.
Sure.
Sort of thing. And then shortly after that, and I didn't.
Right.
I went back home and I did my usual praying and repenting.
Uh-huh.
And then shortly after that, at the same bar, a regular Joe, another customer, and I started talking, and I did go home with him.
Uh-huh.
he said, why don't we go back to my place?
Uh-huh.
And yeah, we did it.
Right.
You know, we just blowjobs.
Right.
But I felt
Sure.
I still, you know, when I look back on it, at that point in my life,
Sure.
it still affects me as how evil it was. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going straight to hell. As soon as the whole thing, we fell asleep in each other's arms on his sofa.
Sure.
And when I woke up at 5 a.m. on a Sunday,
Right.
I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine.
What the heck, you know? I'm like, I'm going straight to hell. That's all I kept in my head. This is it. I'm done.
So, you know, after something that, you know, many people would look at as be like, look, we love each other. We're, you know, something that would, for many people, would cause joy was something that went very much in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I felt I was doomed.
Right.
You know.
Did he pick up on that? How did he?
He was still asleep.
Right.
I did the walk of shame. He was asleep. I grabbed my stuff, and I went out.
Right.
At 5 a.m.
Ran home, snuck in.
No,
got
I
ready
went.
For church.
I went.
I'm sorry to put words in your mouth.
No, well, no, it was very. I had, as I talked to you about my bachelor trunk. I had Sunday clothes.
Nice.
In my car. I went straight to the church and I waited in the parking lot until my bishop came. Because I didn't know what I was like.
Didn't know what to do.
I need to not do this.
Right.
I can't do
you
this.
You needed help.
Yeah.
To prevent you from making
going
another
any further.
Quote unquote mistake like this.
And so I went to my bishop in the singles ward, and I told him what happened. Everything.
And
he said, "Do you want to be gay?" And I'm like, "No, I don't.
Of course not.
I don't want to be gay." And that's when therapy started.
I see.
And I wasn't to tell anybody. I remember him, you know, this is between us.
And the psychiatrist or psychologist or whoever you were seeing was LDS as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, a very good friend of the family. I grew up with him. We used to go to his farm and play with his goats.
That must have been a bit awkward.
It was.
In addition to the other awkwardness of the whole thing.
Yes. And, the whole therapy was bizarre.
I bet.
And, nobody knew about it. And I was disfellowshipped.
Right.
And
was that public? Did anybody else know?
Well, they knew I was they could see, like, when you're in church and you're no longer in the choir and you're no longer taking the sacrament and you're no longer don't ask David questions.
Right. If he raises his hand, don't answer. Don't call on him, kind of thing.
And I didn't raise my hand. I just kept quiet.
Oh, sure.
You know, and of course my friends came. Dave, why aren't you taking the sacrament? I said, I've just got some issues to work through.
Right.
And then with the therapy, it was behavioral and reparative. And
if it's all right to ask, I mean, what was that? What was that like? I mean, you don't go into any detail, but
the behavioral was mannerisms and how to.
So be, more or less how to be a man. How to pass.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that wouldn't.
How to be a man.
Sure.
And it was funny because part of my therapy was to go on a date
with a woman. Right.
And he would follow. And he would, sit a few rows behind in the theater or on another table at a restaurant.
Unseen to
my date.
Companion. Right.
And then we would talk about it. What do you think went well with that? How do you think you could be more of a man with this, as opposed to, talking with my hand more gesturally like this, and
interesting.
Don't put your elbows on the table or da-da-da-da or whatever it was. And then he started also with the more dominating mother and the absent father, and I'm like, yeah, of course my father's absent. He's on the high council. He's away all the time. Yes. And I even said to him, I said, you're just doing Freudian things. This isn't helping. Anybody can chirp off Freudian theory and say this is why you're gay.
Right.
I sucked on the teat too long.
Sure.
My oral fixation hasn't been satiated or whatever.
Right.
And I said, you need to find another way to say this is why and how you can stop it. Because,
Because at that time you were desperate for something to fix you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and talking about my dominating mother, no.
You were like, look, what you're doing. It wasn't like,
This
I
is-
don't want you to do what you're
this
doing.
is
It's I want you to do a better job of fixing me.
Yeah, this is cookie cutter
Right.
psychology that you're doing. I could have, my friend JJ, the stripper, could have done that.
He was taking psychology.
He was taking
classes.
psychology.
Right.
And so, yeah, and then I ended up just agreeing with him with things.
Mhm.
I was so tired of it.
Sure.
So tired of it.
So you sort of lost confidence in it fairly early on?
Yeah.
Okay.
And therapy lasted about 7 months.
Uh-huh.
And I just was like, okay. And I said, oh, yeah. And then I started using the mannerisms that he suggested and agreeing with answers about how I can become, why this is taking place. And it ended up being that, because he asked, I told him about JJ,
Uh-huh.
and I told him about the guy.
Uh-huh.
I don't even know his name that I went home with.
Uh-huh.
And why I didn't go home with JJ, but I went home with the regular guy.
Uh-huh.
And I put men on a pedestal because I was scrawny.
Uh-huh.
I was, at 23, I was probably maybe 110 pounds, if
Okay.
that.
Right.
No muscles, no definition.
Right.
And I craved the companionship of muscular men because I wasn't.
Right. So is this what you were telling him at the time?
No, yeah.
Okay.
Well, he was asking me, why do you think you were attracted to JJ? And I'm like, well, look at him. In my head, I was like, he's gorgeous.
Right. But you couldn't say that.
And I
so you
couldn't
had to
say
come up
that.
with
So I was
something.
like, he's got muscles, he's intelligent.
Uh-huh.
And then he would say, why do you think that attracts you?
Uh-huh.
And then I would say, because that's not me.
Huh.
And I would put my low self-esteem that
Interesting. Because it could never have possibly been like
it could never been because I'm attracted to
him.
him because I'm attracted to him.
Right.
Because that's who I am.
Right.
That
Yeah.
wasn't it. No, it was my low
course.
self-esteem.
Right.
And again, because no, I'm not gay.
Right. Of course, that's the entire premise of the therapy.
Yeah.
Right.
And so yeah, I came up with this idea that it was low self-esteem for myself, and it probably, yes, I did have low self-esteem.
Sure.
Because
but that
of all
wasn't the thing.
but that wasn't
right.
the thing that was making no.
Because lots of straight men with low self-esteem then make poor choices with their love life.
Yeah.
And it's they don't like, oh man, my low self-esteem, I'm attracted to men, but when I feel good about myself, I'm attracted to women. Like
Yes.
That's, anyway.
Yeah. And so, he tried to get me into sports, and I'm like, I don't do sports. I've
Right.
never done sports. Why
Right.
would I make a fool of myself in front of attractive, muscular sportsmen
Right.
to make myself feel more manly?
Right.
That would just shrink myself
Right.
down. So we didn't go that route.
Right.
And I ended up just saying that I have to build up my self-esteem.
Oh, and he sort of accepted that and said, "Oh, you're cured."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I would work on it a little bit, and yeah, because I can remember on our dates that he would follow on. He ended up saying, "Look at the confidence that you're having with this woman.
Mm-hmm.
You're assertive in your questions. You're assertive more.
Right.
You're showing yourself more as a dominating man."
And just to back up a bit, how were these dates happening? Would he like find them? Would you?
No,
would he
there were people that I
encourage you
knew.
to-
I actually went on it with his daughter was one. Because we were good friends.
Ah, I see.
Like-
So it wasn't like he was like, "Oh, use my daughter."
No, he
Like,
didn't say
okay.
use my daughter.
Right.
We were doing it. There was an international fireworks festival, and I said to him, there was a bunch of girls actually.
Uh-huh.
I went on, me and two girls. It was I don't know what it was. It was just us hanging out,
Right.
really. But yeah, and he said, "Well, why don't me and my wife come along?"
Mhm.
Like, sure, why not?
Right.
It's a family affair.
Sure.
And I was just in control the whole time.
Uh-huh.
Like I knew where we were going to sit, and I said, "No, don't park here. Use that parking. It's cheaper." Da 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 da.
Uh-huh.
And just in 100% in control of the whole situation.
Right.
And he was so impressed because no gay man would be that
Impossible.
much. How could you?
How? Yes.
Yeah. And so he's like, "Look at how much in control you are now.
Right.
Look at how much more self-esteem you have."
Right.
And
He must have felt like I have done it.
I have done it.
Right.
And
Little did he know.
so yeah, and he reported back to my bishop and how much I've improved,
Mhm.
and I was able to take the sacrament again. And
Did you at any point towards the end of this feel like maybe I have been fixed, or did you always knew that it was like, oh no, this hasn't done anything?
I don't really know. I don't. I haven't thought of. I think I did know. No, I don't know.
Sure.
I think I knew. I think I felt that I might have been fixed.
Okay.
By the end of it.
Was it sort of like at the end you were like,
because,
well, let's try this out. Now let's go
that's what it was like.
Actually get a
now
girl.
Maybe. Once I started telling him what he wanted to hear, I thought, well, maybe that's all I need to do. Sort of thing.
Maybe it's that easy.
Maybe it's that easy. As opposed to always having to struggle with it.
Right.
If I show my assertiveness and I show that I can be in control and that
If I can convince him, I can convince a woman.
Yeah, and I can convince myself.
And maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I had a good chat with the bishop, and he says, "No, to seal, I can't remember the exact word. Seal the deal.
Right. Okay.
Marry in the temple, and that'll cure all.
That'll really
bind it.
Right. Okay.
Because you'll have the power of God in your hand now.
Right.
And I was like, well, okay.
Right. Well, and that's
terrifying still, terrifying.
But it must have felt in some ways sort of like, if not like comforting, like sort of familiar at least, because it's like, oh, I'm back on track. Yes. That I'd always been told I should be on.
Because it was.
I can get back on it now.
I had gone so far because I was disfellowshipped.
Sure.
And it's the weirdest thing to me looking back, and even kind of then, that I'm in my deepest need.
Yeah.
And I'm no longer allowed to take the sacrament.
Yeah, it was.
It's like, what?
I will say, it always does seem like at the time in which you should be, it seems remarkably inappropriate for the, at a time when you need more support, you're getting, perhaps in some ways, you could look at it as getting less.
But I can, and see, the way they told me was that once you receive it again, you'll feel more blessed again because you've had the absence of it.
Did you find that to be true?
No, actually.
Oh, okay. And
even
at this
though
time, very believing and everything.
I was still very believing, but I still, at this point, I felt a little betrayed by it.
Oh, okay.
That it was a bit disenchanting that I couldn't take the sacrament when I needed it.
Sure.
But then it took me about another 2 years to fully get back into the swing of it. Not that I went inactive.
Right.
And I didn't drink anything. And I just plugged along until it felt right. I can remember having a dream when I was in the singles ward still of being in the great and spacious building of Nephi's vision and looking at the iron rod. And that was like an eye-opener to me that I needed to fix my way of thinking.
Okay.
That the path that I'm, my nonchalantness to the gospel that has supported me the whole time, except for this one brief moment, needs to change.
Okay. So what kind of message did you take from that?
That I needed to jump over the chasm and dig deeper into the gospel. So I did more studying.
More sort of redouble your efforts, rededicate
myself. And go to the temple more and stuff like that.
And in these intervening 2 years where you were kind of like, you were feeling a little bit uneasy, were you dating? Like, what was your love life?
I had a girlfriend.
Okay.
I had two. I had two girlfriends at that point. One of them I did propose to. That didn't work out. Right. And then the rest of it, after Dawn and I broke up, I totally rededicated myself. And after I had broken up with Dawn, a mutual friend of my ex-wife and I wrote to Sharon and said, "Oh, he's feeling a bit down. Why don't you write a letter to him?"
Uh-huh.
And then Sharon started writing to me.
Right.
And we started corresponding with letters back in the day.
Sure.
On a weekly basis, 2 or 3 letters a week.
Mm-hmm.
And
But you guys lived fairly close by?
across the ocean. She lived in England.
Oh, I see. Okay.
She lived in England. And I met her on my mission.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
On the first day that I got...
I thought that you guys were in the same place.
No. When I landed off the plane, July 17th, 1989, her family was the first family to feed me. But nothing happened on our mission. She actually got engaged to one of my friends on the mission. And,
Guess didn't work out.
No,
Right.
that didn't. And so we started writing, and then she came over, I guess around General Conference time.
Okay.
Because
October or April?
April's.
Okay.
April General Conference, she came over, and we had a great time, and I was assertive and manly, and
Sure.
we were in the singles ward again, still, and...
So she'd come to stay or just come to visit?
Just to visit.
Oh, I see.
Just to visit. And one day in church, I bore my testimony, I guess,
Uh-huh.
and how proud I was and grateful I was for the priesthood, and that I, clean hands, pure hearts, I can, sort of thing.
Right.
And later on, she told me that testimony is what made her see my love for the gospel and saw that I was a good guy.
Right. Okay.
And then she went back to England. We wrote a little more, and I went and visited her in July.
Okay.
And I proposed to her
Uh-huh.
at that point. And then we got married in December.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was pretty quick.
Okay. And then she came to live
She came to live in Canada.
in Canada? Okay.
And terrified on my honeymoon.
Huh.
How was I supposed to have sex with a woman?
Sure.
I had no idea.
Just seemed very foreign, the idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just crazy.
I bet.
And it was hard. Like the first night, I can remember reading scriptures on our honeymoon
Huh. Okay.
because I was so terrified.
Right. Well, and that was something that you felt like, okay, this is what I've done before when I've had difficult situations. This is why not do that again here?
Yeah.
It'll help me get to where I need to be somehow.
And so I just plugged. It sounds horrible.
Sure.
I feel like a horrible guy.
No.
I plugged through it.
Sure.
As they say.
Sure.
And did the best I could.
Sure.
And I was 17 years of marriage. I was the best person and husband that I could be.
Right.
I was 100% devoted to her.
Right.
Loved her.
Right.
But it was hard. It was so hard.
Sure. I mean,
every day was every second.
Sure.
Was a dichotomy for me.
Right. It was like a splitting of your person.
Yeah, because when I got married, I guess when we were getting sealed in the temple,
Uh-huh.
I knew that it's what I had to do.
Right.
It's hard to explain.
Sure.
I knew it's what I had to do.
Right.
But in my inner soul,
There was something
so
about you
wrong.
rebelling.
It was so wrong.
So your heart and your head were disagreeing about it.
Yeah. This is what I have to do because
it's what I have to do.
It's what I have to do. In the church, you get married in the temple.
Right. Well, and they said specifically to finally fix the cure.
This is it.
This is the step.
And
did you feel in that moment like, oh my goodness, I'm not fixed?
Yes, I did, and I pushed it aside as fast as I could.
Sure.
As soon as it entered, no.
Right.
This is it.
Right.
And there was times when there was times when sex was great.
Right.
But no,
right.
It wasn't.
Right.
But it was.
Sure. Well, because presumably, you were building a life together with her. You had children with her. Like, you had affection for her. it wouldn't have been something that you would have pursued if not for this particular set of circumstances, but it would, I mean, as you say, you were devoted to her, so I'm sure that creates some sort of, like genuine love and affection.
Yes, yeah.
But not the kind of thing that would sustain the physical side of a marriage
Yeah.
Normally.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that makes sense.
And so throughout the marriage, I did everything I could
Sure.
to make it right, and we appeared to be the great. And I felt that it was working.
Right.
She often tells me now that she was never happy.
Ah.
So obviously she felt something.
But
wasn't right.
At the time, was she ever like on the honeymoon or anywhere else? Was there ever times where you could feel like, oh boy, she's on to me, or
a few times. Just after.
And by all means, please only share as much as you're comfortable. Don't yeah.
I'm an open book now. I couldn't care less anymore.
Okay.
She said to me I went and picked up a car
Mm-hmm.
in Manitoba. My parents were in Manitoba, and our car broke down, and so they said, "Come and get our car."
From Manitoba.
From Manitoba all the way to Toronto.
Wow.
So I drove
Not
it
drive.
back, and in the winter, and
Of course. Uphill.
yeah.
Assumably.
Yeah.
Presumably.
But Sharon wanted to come, and I said, I in my head, the idea of driving back to her was more romantic than her coming.
Okay.
For some reason.
Okay.
And the notion of me, I've got the car, and then open arms and stuff like that. I had this romantic notion in my head that it was all going to be nice.
Okay.
I don't know why. But she said, while you were gone, I thought of leaving.
Oh wow.
And
how far into the marriage were you at this point?
a few months.
Oh,
4 or 5 months. Not long.
Okay.
And because it was that winter.
Right.
And she says, what would you have done, David, if I had left, gone back to England? And I was like, there's nothing I can do. You're a free woman. I'm not going to force you to be in a marriage you're not wanting to be in.
Right.
And she said to me, that's the wrong answer.
Huh.
She wanted me to, fly off to England and chase her down.
Right.
But I'm not one to
insist.
If you're not happy, that's not I'm not going to force you to be happy.
Right.
Because in my head, that's what the church was doing to me. The church was forcing me to be happy their way.
Right.
And I was doing the best I could, and it was kind of making me miserable.
Sure.
As trying to be happy.
So you felt like I could never put that on someone else.
Yes. And this is all in hindsight.
Right.
Like at the time, I don't think I was thinking that.
Sure.
But I obviously was.
Right.
But only in hindsight do I realize that.
All the things that I love might be over, and I'm stuck here, both hands full of closure. But I'm not sorry for me. I know that it's not